The youngest was, I think, 17.
Sent a 17-year-old boy from here to Pakistan?
That's right, yeah.
To be involved in jihad in Pakistan?
To be involved in terrorist training in Pakistan, that's correct, yeah.
Hassan Butt was only 16 when he was recruited by the network. Like thousands of other young British Muslims, he became exposed to some of the most radical imams in Britain, imams who supported attacks on Westerners all over the world, and who believed that they had a tacit agreement with the British authorities.
Go and attack, kill, occupy, take, and then you can justify.
They could preach hatred, they could recruit followers, they could raise funds, they could even call for jihad, holy war, as long as they didn't call for attacks on British soil. London became such a safe haven for Muslim militants that it came to be known as Londanistan.
You think this was an unspoken deal with the establishment, that do whatever you want here as long as you don't blow us up?
Absolutely. I believe that sincerely, that it was an unspoken deal. And as a result of that, what tended to happen is the British government lost count of how many people were going abroad, getting trained, and coming back and going into operational mode as sleeper cells.
The deal was shattered in July 2005. That's when the 4 suicide bombers blew themselves up on the London subway. 3 of the terrorists were born in Britain of Pakistani parents.
The 4 men who blew themselves up all came from good families, good homes, good education. How do you explain what they did?
For me, they did it simply because they were convinced that they were doing something in the name of God, in the name of Islam, and they honestly believed they would obtain paradise from doing the activities that they carried out, the terrorist attacks that they carried out.
You will be our targets.
This is the ringleader, Mohammed Sadiq Khan, in a video of his last will. Hassan Butt had met him, but insists they never discussed specific operations. Khan told him he first became attracted to radical Islam because the tradition he grew up with was forcing him into an arranged marriage. The radical imams were offering him a way out.
A lot of guys I know actually have become radicalized, or initially took the first steps towards learning more about Islam and their way of life as a result of them being forced to marry someone they don't want to marry.
And the radical Islamic preachers are all in favor of you marrying whoever you want?
Oh yeah, as long as they're Muslim and they're practicing Islam.
So this is a very effective and important proselytizing technique?
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's just the start of the recruiting process. It's bringing him into the tent. Hassan Butt would follow up with young men in his gym in Manchester, England, and in neighborhood pool halls. He says he personally recruited between 50 and 75 people to receive training in Pakistan. Thousands more were being recruited elsewhere in Britain.
We talk about the suffering of the Muslims all over the world. We were very well versed in books, in ideas in the Quran, in the verses of the Quran, in the sayings of the Prophet, and show that how it was permissible for people to go around killing innocent men, women and children.
You would explain to them why it's permissible to kill innocent men, women and children?
Well, a better way to put it is we would take away the innocence from the person, so they were no longer innocent men, women and children.
Men, women and children would become non-innocent?
Non-innocent, and hence combatants and allowed to be targeted.
At what point would you say, we think you should go to Pakistan?
Never. I would never say that, ever. It's not me forcing them. I mean, the network never pushes people in that way. Because we believe that if the person has the conviction themselves to come up to you and say they want to go training, then they are the type of person who will most likely take that one step further and will be the reliable foot soldiers for you.
And the reliable foot soldier is all Hassan Butt wanted to be when he decided to move to Pakistan at age 20. That's him with a bullhorn agitating against Pakistan's pro-Western government in 2001. Behind the scenes, he was helping young British Muslims get to Afghanistan to fight alongside the Taliban.
This is not a war against Taliban. This is a war against Islam.
British Muslims had flocked to Pakistan for military training, but as the Taliban retreated, many of them wanted to take the fight back home.
Back in 2002,
yeah,
you warned BBC Radio in an interview from Pakistan that British Muslims fighting in Afghanistan would return home and take military action within Britain.
Yeah.
And that you were in favor of this.
Yeah.
At the time, did you really believe that British Muslims would attack their own country?
Yeah, absolutely. These were people that I was meeting, and these were people who decided to return back to Britain to become, sleeper cells.
Sleeper cells that stayed asleep for a little while.
Yeah.
Hassan Butt told us that he began associating with militants who had been involved in terrorist attacks in Pakistan in which people had lost their lives. So when he was tipped off that the Pakistani authorities were about to arrest him, he flew back to Britain, where he was arrested, questioned for 5 days, and released without charge. He became one of the network's star fundraisers. Over the next couple of years, he says, he raised $300,000. It may surprise you to learn who his biggest contributors were.
Doctors, people who were businessmen, people who were, professional people, basically, who wanted to donate substantial amounts of money.
And what did you say you were raising money for?
For jihad.
And Hassan Butt says he didn't just solicit from the professional classes. He also targeted criminals, drug dealers, who were told that their activities would be cleansed for a percentage of their earnings.
What kind of percentage?
20%. 20% is what we would...
20% brought a drug dealer legitimacy in Islamic eyes?
In Islamic eyes, yeah.
Thereby, the rest of his money was being purified.
Absolutely. As long as the drugs weren't being sold to other Muslims, they were being sold to non-Muslims. In fact, we saw it as a tactic of war to keep, as one of the people that I sat with said, well, let's keep poisoning the non-Muslim community in the West. Let's feed their addiction for heroin.
Feed the infidels' addiction.
Addiction for the drugs that we possess, and let's poison them and kill them slowly with this as well.
And this was a tactic you discussed with the drug dealers?
Oh yeah, it was a way that we made them feel better for the work that they were doing.
You made a drug dealer feel better about himself?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
And how did you get this money from here to Pakistan?
There was the Hawala system that was available for us, the trust-based,
Hawala system,
which is the trust-based system. We'd contact someone here, we'd give them money, they'd make a phone call to Pakistan saying this amount of money has been deposited with us. Someone by this name and this age will come and collect this amount of money from you in Pakistan. And they obviously would take a fee, which would pay. No paperwork, no trail.
With no paper trail?
With no paper trail.
And it always works?
Always works, yeah.
Who exactly in Pakistan was getting the money?
These were basically affiliates of Al-Qaeda, basically.
Do you have any idea what they were using the money for?
No. I knew they were using it for terrorist activities, but not the specific operation.
Why is he telling us all this? Because, he told us, the London bombings changed him. He began asking questions of his handlers, theological questions. He wanted to know whether the bombings could ever be justified in Islam. He waited and waited for answers. Months later, he was summoned by his handlers to a meeting in the Middle East. But he wasn't given answers, only new orders.
They were trying to force me into Iraq to fight, basically.
So to summarize, you're asking basically, why should we be killing innocent people?
That's correct.
And the answer you eventually receive is, go to Iraq and perhaps carry out a suicide mission.
Go to Iraq to basically, the actual word that they used was that I needed reprogramming. And Iraq would give me the opportunity to basically be reprogrammed for what I needed. And I was quite shocked at the analogy to think that, well, firstly, I'm neither a computer nor a robot. And I don't do on your say-so, I do on God's say-so. And if you can't justify to me or prove to me that this is what God wants, then I'm going to have to go my separate ways.
Were you frightened?
Shocked more than frightened. But yes, definitely I was intimidated at that point.
Hassan Butt says it was after that meeting that he began answering his questions himself.
What I've come to realize is that killing for the sake of killing and killing in the name of Islam for the sake of killing is completely and utterly prohibited, and is a big disease, a big problem and a cancer in the Muslim world, and it's a very dangerous cancer, and it needs to be dealt with.
How?
If Muslims can pluck up the courage to ask questions regardless of the consequences, then I do see that there is still hope, to cure this cancer.
Hassan Butt made his about-face public last January at Cambridge University at the debating union. For the first time, he revealed that he had left the network and announced his strategy to confront radical Muslims.
The position of moderate Muslims is that Islam has nothing to do with terrorism. Do you buy that?
No, absolutely not. By completely being in denial, it's like an alcoholic, basically. Unless an alcoholic acknowledges that he has a problem with alcohol, he's never going to be able to go forward. And as long as we, as Muslims, do not acknowledge that there is a violent streak in Islam, unless we acknowledge that, then we are going to always lose the battle to the militants by being in complete denial about it.
Butt's private life is a shambles right now. His family has called him a traitor to Islam, and his former friends from the network have threatened his life. He's writing a book about his transformation and his challenge to Muslims. He says he wants to make right what he calls the bad work he did before. Bad work that may have included more direct involvement in terrorism than fundraising and recruitment.
You now consider it bad work that you used to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Not just bad. I mean, I think bad is an understatement. It's evil, wicked work that I carried.
Evil, wicked. What's the most evil, wicked thing you did?
It's not something that I want to talk about on camera.
The things you don't want to talk about on camera are the most evil and wicked things you've done.
Yeah.
Do you lose sleep over them today?
Yeah.